like to welcome Honor and Hrisanthi here who are joining us and presenting about Print Radio Tasmania and what is print radio. I've had the absolute pleasure to work with both of these wonderful women, and I was so chuffed when they said that they would come along and chat to us. And I think they've done me the dirty by putting a big picture of my face on one of the slides. So I guess that's my payment for making them come speak to us tonight. But I think you guys will all very much enjoy this presentation, and hopefully you want to get involved with Print Radio Tasmania as well.
So Hrisanthi speaking here, and thank you so much, Rosie. I really appreciate this opportunity to come and talk to you all about what print radio is all about, and tell a little bit about the background of what we do at Print Radio and some of the projects that we've been involved in this year and moving forward, and developing collaborations with people in the community, and what a perfect group to be able to collaborate with. So thank you. So first up, our motto, Print Radio Tasmania, our motto is turning print into sound. So basically, Print Radio is a community radio station, so it's run by volunteers. We have two paid personnel, the broadcast manager, and we have an admin coordinator, and he also coordinates the volunteers. And basically it's through, I think we've got currently about 45 volunteers that read out the news, they conduct interviews, they tell the weather, and book readings, magazines. There's a whole range of services that, print materials that we read out to our listeners. So that's essentially what Print Radio Tasmania is. It's turning print into sound. So we, now how do I go to the next slide?
I can use this slide.
Oh, great. Thank
What
you,
a
Honor.
team.
What a team. So basically, Print Radio Tasmania is actually a leader across the nation. So we actually were established in 1982, and we were the first print radio in Australia. So it was something that took some time to actually get established. I think it was about 4 or 5 years in the making, working with various groups in the disability sector together with the federal government to actually provide transmitters and all that sort of thing, get federal funding. So yeah, 1982 was the year that we were established, and it was in someone's home in Montague Street. So the woman who founded it in Tasmania, she basically set it up in one of the rooms in her house, and it ran there for some years. So it was June the 26th that we commenced our daily programming, and we started being heard on the AM frequency of 1620. So that's just a little bit of history. Then we sort of grew from there. We had a growing listenership and more funding from the government, and then in 1991 we moved to the band 864 AM, and we had new studios in Davies Street, 136 Davies Street in Hobart, and that's where we still are. So we went from someone's room to 4 studios, and we've got a volunteer space, an administrative office, and we've just really developed our space in Hobart to a point where we were able to then transmit from Launceston, and then a 3rd transmitter was put in 2013 in Devonport. So for any of you there who are listening that are based in Launceston in the Tamar Valley, and you don't listen to Print Radio Tasmania, our call sign is 106.9 FM, and in Devonport it's 96.1 FM.
And you can also listen to it you can stream it on the website.
Yeah.
And you can download the community radio app, which is called what's it called? Community Plus. So you can actually listen to it on digital. But this is, hang on, that's what, there's a, I was going to show you a big print pink screen that says community radio. You can search for that on your Play Store, and then you can set print radio as a favourite.
I didn't know that.
There you go. There you go.
So it's Hrisanthi speaking here again. So we originally, our name was changed because originally in the name they had the term handicapped. So it was well before, we became more accessible. And there are still radio stations in around Australia that do have the word handicapped in their name. So on many levels, I think Print Radio Tasmania has been a very sort of forward-looking and inclusive station. So who are our target audience? Is it just people with low or no vision? No. That is our main audience, but we also provide for people with literacy barriers or have English as a second language, and that's a growing market or audience for us. And we're also expanding as we move forward into a broader range of people with disabilities, and we're going to tell you a little bit about that shortly. I'm going to hand over to Honor now, and she can tell us a little bit about our programming, maybe.
So the programming runs 24/7. We've got a combination of local programming, plus we cut over to the BBC. Oh yeah, there's a slide. There we go. We cut over to the BBC World Service, which is just perfect for you at midnight when you can't get to sleep and you just want to hear the shipping forecast or the soccer results. Tottenham 4, Arsenal 3, and it just goes through that for ages and ages. Anyway, the BBC World Service is quite relaxing. And then the main part of print radio, the flagship kind of offering, is between 10 and midday daily. We read through the Mercury, the Examiner and the Advocate. And we have all of our volunteers come in, dedicate that time every day to read through. It's through the highlights. It's not, it's not the rubbish and the ads and all that kind of stuff. It's selected the most important articles of the day. And the readers also describe the images that are on the paper as well. So it's quite a conversational, we're just looking at a picture of a man, a vet, who's holding a wombat, and the wombat looks quite comfortable. And the article is entitled "Vet Adopts Wombat," something like that. So it's quite a lovely kind of conversational way to listen to the newspaper every day. We also have a lot of pre-record book readings. So local authors will record an audio version of their books, but then there's also, we get content syndicated from all around Australia. So Community Radio Network. So this is actually a printout of our program schedule, which you can have a look at. I'm holding up a printout, but it's available on the Print Radio website. And it sort of tells you all of the shows that are available to listen to. And half of it is Hobart content, and the rest is other really good content from the radio network from other community stations around Australia. And then also we do interviews and podcasts. So interviews, for example, we have a segment where two of our volunteers go down to the Kingston Library and they talk to someone each week about an interesting project that might be happening in the library, or they go down to the depths of the Allport Museum and they'll pick out some elements from the archives and they'll talk to an archivist about it. Or so there's lots of kind of special interest interviews happening throughout the programming. And also particular segments. For example, one I enjoy, it seems to always be on when I turn the radio on in the morning, is the diabetes segment. So there's one volunteer who's particularly passionate about diabetes. So she reads publications related to diabetes, the latest kind of trends or information or research in a sort of show. So she'll come in and she'll read that.
Hrisanthi speaking here. I just wanted to also add to what Honor was just saying. Often our programs do are based on interests that the volunteers have themselves. So there's a sporting program that's run by somebody who's really, really interested in sport. So who'll read maybe the Weekend Australian and the sporting things that are in the Weekend Australian, or one of the other interview programs that are held is also with the Wicking Dementia Studies. That's a huge area in Hobart that's being investigated, and we've got a whole program dedicated to that as well.
Yeah, so there's lots of different things, something for everyone in the schedule, and it's sort of changing all the time. And so Hrisanthi and I mean, I've been a volunteer for at Print Radio for just a year now. My mum actually reads for Print Radio, and she has done for the last 20 years. So I've kind of had an association with it, but not joined until now. And I also come from radio world as well. I work for the ABC as a producer. So I'm able to bring some of the more kind of commercial ideas of radio. And so Hrisanthi and I have been kind of working on some projects with sponsorship from other organisations. And one in particular that I've worked on is with Powered Media. Powered Media is a disability-led media platform which is Australia-wide, and it's federally funded, and they've only just launched maybe 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, and they're working with community RPH stations all around Australia to give them capacity to create content that is disability-led. And so that's how I kind of really sunk my teeth into print radio and produced a podcast called Literacy Legends with Hrisanthi and Rosie. So maybe we'll skip to that. So this podcast was a really innovative project for print radio to really take us into the next level of building new content makers, new storytellers from around Tasmania. And we created a 6-episode podcast all about literacy in Tasmania, because literacy is a big challenge that we think about. And we know the statistics of 48% of Tasmanians are functionally illiterate. But also our listeners are also people with low literacy because they prefer to listen to the newspapers rather than read, or for a number of reasons. So we knew that this was going to be an interesting topic, and as part of that, we engaged 4 hosts. So Hrisanthi hosted a couple of episodes, 2 episodes. Rosie hosted an episode. Annalise, you can see on our screen, she's smiling with the pink cardigan. And then Christy Stichter on the right-hand side of the screen there, she's based in Burnie. And each of these 4 amazing people learnt the craft of podcasting and telling stories, all while celebrating some of the legends in Tasmania who are doing really good things to lift the statistics of literacy. And it was a really cool project to be part of, and that launches on the 1st of December. So just in 2 weeks or something, we've got a big launch with lots of fancy big wigs coming along. And Hrisanthi and Rosie, what was your experience of being part of that podcast?
I'm going to hand to Rosie to start.
Rosie speaking. I said this in an interview about this podcast that I've been waiting my whole life for someone to ask me to make a podcast with them. So I was very chuffed when Honor called me up. I think for me, the process, I feel like people talk about storytelling a lot, and there's this idea of, storytelling's important. And I've never really understood kind of what that meant. And in my brain, I was just like, just recount everything that's happened, and that's a story. And turns out that that's not actually what people are talking about when they mean storytelling. And I think the biggest thing I learned is that it actually doesn't have to always be my voice. I can still have the idea, and we're still getting to the same goal, but with lots of different people bringing in different parts of it. A little bit like, when you'd write an essay and you'd use some statistics and then you'd use a quote, and all of those sorts of things. Sort of similar in that way, and a lot more fun than writing an essay, in my opinion. That's like a really boring example to use, but sort of bringing all the parts together and having many people speak on the same topic in different ways, but to achieve the same goal. And that was so interesting to me, and that's what I bring forward in everything I do now. How can we tell the story in many ways to achieve more meaning? That's me.
Hrisanthi speaking here. So for me, one of the real big positives was actually working with Honor and learning about the whole process of podcasting. I'd actually run a podcast myself a couple of years ago in collaboration with an author in Colorado in the United States, and we basically did it over Zoom. And I did it out of my living room, basically. Whereas this was actually going out into the field as such, with our microphones and recording devices, and meeting people who were changing the lives of people experiencing literacy challenges. So we went out to a couple of schools and interviewed teachers and teacher assistants. We went into a kindergarten and worked with a little boy who had some literacy issues. So it was really exciting to actually get out into the field and do something completely different, and then be part of the video making as well. I found that really interesting, and it was very empowering. Being involved in the whole process was very empowering, because it was learning new skills and working with exciting people and meeting Rosie, and that's led to this opportunity tonight. So
should we watch the video?
Yeah, let's do it.
So they, as part of it, Powered Media made a cool little documentary about us.
A survey showed that around 48% of Tasmanians did not have a baseline level of skill with their literacy and numeracy.
Who are the amazing people around the state who are doing fantastic things and working on creative and novel projects to improve the statistics? So about 6 months ago, Matt Field from Powered Media approached us at Print Radio Tasmania, and he had this idea about creating a podcast about literacy. For One, it's a really challenging issue that people are familiar with in Tasmania. But two, there is a portion of the audience who listen to print radio because we read the newspapers every day. So those people who have lower literacy levels are tuning in. We have recruited 4 hosts to teach them the basics of podcasting, all while creating an actual podcast that is going to be released out into the world.
Hi, my name's Rosie and I'm proudly disabled. So we're here in Hobart and I've been helping produce and host a podcast called Literacy Legends. I've sort of been waiting my whole life for someone to ask me to make a podcast with them. So I absolutely jumped at the opportunity. I have my own digital accessibility consultancy. So day to day, I'm working with clients about how we can make digital products and services more accessible to people with disabilities. And I think that interest is really reflected in my episode where we talk about assistive technology and how that can improve literacy. Can you tell us some of the most common technology and literacy barriers that students face, particularly when they're transitioning to higher education?
One of the biggest and first barriers that I certainly see a lot is purely just that transition. Going very much from a state-funded support system where there's a lot of one-on-one support for a student into the student now needing to be their own advocate.
So podcast is quite different. I never knew about podcasts. It's a good challenge and challenge my strengths, my weaknesses.
Having a diverse voice on the radio as well is a really important thing. I believe that an opportunity like this podcast enables people to connect with others in that human way.
Test. 1, 2, 3. My name is Annalise Haig, and I'm your host of this episode of Literacy Legends. Who taught you to read here?
Pretty much everyone helped in their own way. So like if I had trouble with spelling something, I wouldn't have to hesitate to ask them to help me read it or spell it.
How did you feel to learn?
Good. Happy.
Programs like this, building the capacity of particularly young disabled people in their storytelling and bringing the stories of their peers forward, I think is so important and brings us so far in getting more representation in the media overall.
Each of the hosts have had an opportunity to learn the basics of microphone technique, interview technique, how to use sound effects and music, and how to tell a story within a sort of 10 to 15 minute episode. So it's tailored to every single host, what they need physically and intellectually to shine. Initially, there was a bit of concern about accessibility issues of the building, but what we found is that we go to them and a microphone can go anywhere.
When you're working in community radio and any community organisation, resources is also an issue. We've been really fortunate with Powered Media who funded the project and made available Honor to work as a producer.
Honor is just fabulous. She's been such a pleasure to work with. One of her biggest skills is trying to find diverse stories and challenging herself to make sure that she gets the voices of people who may not necessarily have had their voices amplified before.
I found out that Honor is amazing of podcasting and she's a great mentor to have. She helps me with speaking. Give me my compliment back. It's so good.
Being involved in a project like this is really exciting, and I think for the participants, there are so many amazing things that come out of it.
I am so excited for the series to air. Honor keeps calling me up and telling me you got to put podcast producer on your resume now. So I think once the series airs, I will feel really confident to be able to do that.
I inspire other people with being a leader of different podcasts. In the future, I'll make more episodes.
I'm really excited to share the stories of people from all around Tasmania. I'm excited for our hosts, for their voices to be heard as well and how they've shaped their episodes. And I'm excited for what the future brings and how we might tell more stories of Tasmanians with disability.
If you have disability, if you not have disability, if you're in love or something, don't give up. Just be you, just actually be you. Express yourself, just like Madonna does.
My one piece of advice for people who might want to give podcasting a go or might want to give storytelling a go is just to start. And there's so many examples of storytellers out there and not a lot of them are disabled. And so you might not see that representation in yourself. But I say go and make the representation.
I love Lucy Legends.
And you know what we say when we're finishing?
That's a wrap.
So you'll see in the slide the promo poster for the Women's Voices project, and there is a QR code there that you can scan. So if anyone is interested in finding out more about that project, you can just scan on that QR code. It takes you to our website and find out more about it, sign up. So if you know of any women in your life who would like to be involved, we want to try and really get this happening in our community. Part of this project, we are also going to be involved in City of Hobart's event at the International Human Rights Day on the 10th of December. So they have an event that happens in Elizabeth Moore between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. And a couple of the groups that are part of our project are going to sing at that event in the mall. So, and that's really exciting because one person in particular has a disability and is also a member of the LGBT community. So again, there's accessibility issues there. So it's exciting to be able to get women in our community out there and sharing their voices and having their stories heard. So essentially, this is going to turn into a 6-episode podcast and also just be aired on the radio as well. Where are we up to next? So where to next is our next slide. So what we want to do basically is to grow our audience. We want to develop our programming. We want to collaborate with community groups and in particular create stories for people with disabilities by people with disabilities. And that, again, that is where Print Radio Tasmania has been at the forefront of this kind of broadcasting in the past, and we want to just grow and do it even better. So what we would love is for people who are part of this group to become involved with Print Radio Tasmania. If you are interested in a podcast that you want to develop, or you want to work with us in terms of collaborating on videos, developing content for our social media, promoting different things in terms of organisations or individuals' activities that are related to disability, we want to be involved. So if you want to tune in, there again is the QR code for tuning in, and Hobart, we are broadcast on 864 AM, Devonport 96.1 FM, and Launceston 106.9 FM. And that's a wrap. So any questions, Honor and I would be delighted to answer them.
Rosie speaking. I might go to online first. Susie or Rob, did you have any questions or comments you would like to bring to Honor and Hrisanthi?
No, but I really loved the presentation. It's so interesting to hear more and see more of the people who are doing it. So great stuff.
Thanks, Susie.
Rob speaking. Thanks for such comprehensive information. Didn't realise a lot of it. Amazing program.
Great. Rob or Matthew? Oh no, not Matthew. No, Rob
Susie.
and Susie. Oh, Levi's gone. Rob, have you listened to Print Radio?
Not for quite some time. It's I probably need to have a look on one of the streaming apps.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're waiting for a bus or, you know, you've got those 5 minutes, you can catch up on some of the things. I think that's the most convenient way on demand for me.
Yeah. So there's an app called Community Plus, which
Oh,
is
awesome.
a collaboration, like a collation of all the community radio stations in Australia. So
I think I can listen to it through my Alexa device as well. I think I
yeah.
can
Yep.
do that. So
Mm.
that's another thing.
Mhm.
It's Ming speaking.
Hello, Ming.
Hi. I actually do have a question about, you mentioned the volunteers, how they read out, say, the newspaper, and you did mention it's a conversational style. And I guess I'm curious, with the AI tech of text to speech and it even being able to mimic styles, how do you see the role of the volunteers evolving at Print Radio? And I'm just curious how you see that and what are the things that only the humans can do?
Yeah.
Hrisanthi speaking here. So I don't think we can ever replace humans and that human voice, regardless of how good AI becomes. Yes, it is conversational style, but we do read, as in proper reading of the papers. But when it comes to photographs and trying to interpret things for our audience, that's not something that an AI can do Well, I know. I personally, I think there's always room for humans. We need to be connected with other humans. We're social animals, and yes, technology does some incredible things, but ultimately, I think it was even you before that said we want technology to work for us, not replace us. And part of the thing about this station is that it is built with volunteers. The volunteers are the community, part of the community, as are the listenership. I don't think AI can replace us.
Yeah, and I technically could, but the heart of it is the community, and it's hearing those voices that aren't perfect. I applied to read the paper, but they did also say, well, your voice is a bit young, and some of our listeners prefer just a more mature voice. So the part of the voice is really important, of the connection of the Tasmanian accents and the people who you might know yourself or you've got 1 degree of separation from. I mean, we could replace it with AI. Probably wouldn't need to, because they're all volunteers anyway, so we're not going to save any money. And then we would lose that community element of it. But yeah. It is interesting. And as time goes on, the audience will have to get younger, won't they? The audience will get older, and then younger audiences will replace them, and we'll have to evolve depending on what the younger audience wants.
Rosie speaking. Rob, I'd love to ask your opinion on this. As someone who's a screen reader user and uses a lot of synthetic voices in your day-to-day life, do you have thoughts on this? Do you have a time that you prefer a real human voice versus a synthetic, Jaws voice, for example?
Yeah, Rob speaking. It's really, really interesting. most people who have heard a screen reader probably familiar with the Jaws voice or Eloquence, which is quite a robotic synthesizer for someone who hasn't been exposed to it much. But however, for reading a lot of material, wikis and information as we're just exposed to and conditioned to listen to, we're actually quite like the way that words are enunciated, or older generations, and that the quality that it retains with speed. So that's the first thing. I couldn't read a book with a synthetic voice in any manner at all. I much prefer it be delivered by those people with the theatre training, where they're doing the voices of the characters. And historically, when I was younger, I was reading a couple of dating newsletters, and it was so funny because the voice that this guru, how to have conversations with women, was saying was just in the Jaws voice, and it just cracked me up every time I was reading it. It's so funny. So there you go. I've exposed myself now, but yeah, definitely for media that I'm consuming, real voices, information that I wanted to consume, probably synthetic.
Yeah, Rosie speaking. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Rob, as someone who uses text to speech. I'm not blind, but use it as someone with dyslexia. Totally agree. Information I want to absorb, I want to speed that up, and I don't want to lose quality. And you lose quality when it is a human voice. Synthetic voices are able to keep that quality of enunciation. So yeah, emails, totally want to speed it up and use a synthetic voice. Audiobooks, I probably want a real human. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, this is Honor speaking, Rob and Rosie, what about when the technology, it's pretty close, it's really good, avatars and AI text to voice is getting pretty good, and it will only take another year or a couple of years, won't it, to get it pretty close to.
Rob speaking, that's probably sorry, I probably have to disagree with you, but I accept the challenge. When you listen to it all the time, every day, for sometimes 16, 18 hours a day, I think it'd be very hard for that AI speech model to beat the human voice. But I welcome to be wrong.
No,
we can be surprised with technology.
I want to be wrong too. I work in audio.
Yeah. It's just
like
this. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just going to say that stringing the sentences together, so you do get phrases, which is getting a lot better, but you still don't get the whole context and so much of the feel of the flow of a story.
Yeah, it's Hrisanthi speaking here, Rob, and I agree with what you're saying. And also, I was just thinking of an incident when I was doing some reading earlier in the year, and there was something in the paper that we were reading out, and then we just made a bit of a joke about it. And there was this banter between the presenter and the two readers. And that, for me, is the human quality of community radio, rather than having some sort of AI just reading the text. There's that connection as well on top of just reading the information, providing the information.
Rob speaking. Sometimes when I communicate a lot with my stakeholders, and sometimes I capture myself being quite low in my affect, the way I communicate, and it's like, oh, sorry if it just delivered like I was a robot. But just in saying that, I've got some nice inflection in my voice, and you can hear that I'm smiling. But sometimes I'm saying, oh well, I think most of the time we'd have to do this, and then we would need to do that, and I want this report, and so on. And it's like, okay, just try that again with personality 2.0.
Rosie speaking. I actually saw a line recently, not so much people being interviewed being AI, but hosts, AI hosts on podcasts. I saw that sort of blow up on LinkedIn, and yeah, someone who obviously gets interviewed a lot, they'd had 10 requests in a week, all from AI hosts, basically getting spammed. Yeah, really, really interesting that maybe the host is the one getting filled in by AI, but not necessarily the interviewee. Yeah. So we're still we're sort of in between, I don't know. But personally, as someone who has done the interviewing, I think it's important to be able to adapt on the spot and listen to what they're saying and change your questions if your questions aren't working, you know, or you're not getting what you want. How can AI get that, you know, even if it is sort of processing. I don't want to say comprehending, I don't think that's the right word, but processing the information.
Rob speaking, and just I think it was in Star Trek Discovery, one of the characters was blinking rapidly and broke the hologram. So what sort of hacks are we going to be able to get out of these AI hosts?
Yeah. Patlin, did you have any questions?
I guess not. Oh no.
Rosa speaking. For those on Zoom, I think people get a little bit nervous when they have to hold the microphone now. We're doing some training for everyone that you have to hold the microphone, but it's not actually amplifying, it's just sending it to our Zoom world.
Oh, yeah. So in terms of volunteering, so sorry, Hrisanthi back again. Ming just asked if you wanted to volunteer, what are the opportunities to volunteer at Print Radio? So you can volunteer to read the newspapers between 10 and 12 on a weekday. You can also volunteer to create a podcast. You can volunteer to run a program interviewing people on a specific topic, or there might be a particular topic that is of interest to you that you would then find print material to read and create a show out of that. I think I've covered it. Is that right, Anna? Is there anything I've missed?
Or if you want to be involved in audio engineering or filming things. We've got a project happening next week where we need someone to film something. There's a whole bunch of skills, website stuff. Yeah, you can imagine all of the opportunities. Writing grants, social media. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we need support from. Yeah, we need a lot of support because we do great stuff, but it's always hard running a volunteer radio station.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you both for coming and chatting and yeah, talking about all the lovely things that you do. We are so proud to support Print Radio Tasmania, and we'll continue supporting it in this community and also within ourselves. But yeah, thank you so much for coming along. It's been